A winter night settles over northern Syria at 2 a.m. Low clouds grinding over a ruined block and a blade of wind slipping through broken walls. The soft hum of a distant generator blends with scattered pops of small arms, thin and sharp in the cold. In a barred window, a child-sized silhouette presses a cheek to iron, while an armed fighter hovers close and uses the small body as a moving shield. The air feels held between heartbeats as the stakes narrow to a sliver no wider than a breath. On a nearby rooftop, Gunnery Sergeant Avery Mantis Collins lies behind an M110 SR, 25 inches 7.62 NATO with a suppressor and a 3 to 18 power optic. Night vision, PVS, 31. A, ready. PRC 163 warm on her kit. Staff Sergeant Noah Park. Spotter and J-TAC. Runs the rangefinder. Checks wind. And keeps comms clean while friendlies flow below. She counts magazines, sets natural point of aim, and waits for a picture that proves positive identification rather than a clock that demands speed. A suppressed shot here is muffled, not silent. And in tight alleys, the direction is harder to place. Yet the rule is simple and human. Discipline over chaos. One precise shot only when it saves lives without collateral harm. Marine Raiders are Marines selected and trained for special operations missions that demand quiet skill and strict discipline. A Marine Special Operations team moves like a small orchestra, each role clear and rehearsed. Especially during a hostage rescue at night. They plan to enter fast, separate threats from innocents, and leave before the neighborhood even understands what happened. The goal is simple to say and hard to do without harming the people they came to save. The team on this night centers on clear command and control. Captain Ethan Brooks owns the plan, the rules of engagement, and the final call on lethal force. He keeps the net clean, and the mission focused on hostages first, friendly safety second, and everything else behind that. His job is not noise but timing. So, the right piece moves at the right moment. Gunnery Sergeant Avery Mantis Collins serves as a Marine Special Operations critical skills operator and precision marksman with a scout sniper background. She lies behind an M110 SR, 25 inches 7.62 NATO, with a suppressor and a 3 to 18 power optic. PVS 31. A night vision rides her helmet. And an optional thermal clip-on is ready if the air turns murky. Staff Sergeant Noah Park pairs with her as spotter and J-TAC, minding a PRC 163. A laser rangefinder, a Kestrel, and clean talk-ons that keep the whole unit aligned. The assault element prepares to breach, clear, isolate, and extract with patient aggression. They run M4A1 carbines, magazines seated tight, and PEQ-15 infrared lasers kept off until needed. A light-breaching charge opens a path that is as small as possible, and a flashbang only flies if rules of engagement allow it. Everyone watches muzzle direction and trigger discipline because one careless second can erase a night of careful work. The place itself matters as much as the people. The compound is a 2-story strongpoint wrapped by cramped alleys, with tripwires in likely lanes and a reinforced panic room inside. Enemy lookouts favor rooftops and windows that cut sharp angles at the breach point, which means the team must think in corridors and backstops. Avery learned that lesson the hard way years ago, when waiting for a full picture cost a life. And it turned her into a quiet professional who will never press the trigger without true positive identification and a safe path for the bullet. A Marine Special Operations team plans a hostage rescue at night in northern Syria with a simple framework that guides complex work. The sequence is breach, clear, isolate, and extract, executed with hostages first and friendly safety close behind. Every movement is mapped to angles, backstops, and safe corridors to move innocents out of harm. The purpose is to end the crisis with the least force needed and with no collateral damage. Captain Ethan Brooks owns command and control, the rules of engagement, and release authority for lethal force. He sets tempo and approves fires only when identification is solid and the backstop is safe. Gunnery Sergeant Avery Mantis Collins and Staff Sergeant Noah Park form Overwatch and Spotter, or JTAC. Holding sight lines, running talk, ons, and coordinating fires. The assault element divides into Alpha as the breacher group and Bravo as support, with blue-on-blue deconfliction spelled out by lane. Target priorities follow ethical and tactical logic that reduces risk to hostages. The caller who is escalating the fight is first. The rooftop gunner who can rake the breach is second. And the hostage handler who attempts movement is third. Radio traffic stays clean with short calls, such as hold fire, friendlies crossing, set, and clear to engage at your discretion when positive identification is confirmed. No one squeezes a trigger until the picture is true and the bullet path is safe. Overwatch applies realistic technical notes that fit the shot. At 200 to 230 meters with an 8 to 10 knot crosswind, mill-based holds often live near 0.2 to 0.3 to speed, a clean break without dialing. A suppressor muffles muzzle blast but does not erase the sonic crack, which can still be masked by wind and generator hum in tight alleys. Magazine management, reloads, muzzle awareness, and laser discipline with infrared devices, often less needed, keep the scene controlled. Contingencies are in place if a technical prepares to drive off with hostages. Denial shots stop the driver only when identification is certain, and the backstop will catch the round. With de-escalation, preferred when a safer tactic exists. The final step before the breach is a short timing cadence that aligns breath, lanes, and authority. The reminder is simple and shared by the net that the picture, not the clock, controls the shot. They move in darkness through a narrow stairwell that smells like dust and cold stone. Avery keeps her shoulders low and stays below the skyline, so her outline never touches the night. Noah covers the rear and mines each landing, pausing to listen for feet or metal on concrete. The roof opens to wind and cloud, and they slide to the shadowed edge where sightlines meet the lanes below. Avery builds a stable shooting position with a bipod up front and a rear bag under the stock. She settles natural point of aim, checks level, and lets her body relax into the rifle. Noah runs a clean spotter flow with a laser rangefinder and a kestrel that reads a steady 8-knot crosswind. He calls 212 meters to the rear door and 236 meters to the exterior stair, while Avery notes potential holds near 0.2 to 0.3 mil. Light and laser discipline stay tight with infrared devices off unless required. Radio brevity rides the PRC 163 with short calls that mark friendlies crossing the glass, followed by a firm hold to prevent blue on blue. The rifle is an M110 SR-25 with a suppressor and a 3 to 18 power optic set for a clear field of view. PVS 31. A night vision sits ready. The thermal clip-on stays staged, and the cold air keeps mirage low while a thin frost on the scope glass gets wiped clean with a gloved thumb. Breath becomes the metronome that holds the team together. Avery aligns reticle and backstop, confirms positive identification standards, and refuses to chase a partial picture. The data stays simple and repeatable with the 8-knot crosswind and the small mill hold waiting in memory rather than on the turret. Captain Ethan Brooks sets breach timing. Avery and Noah own Overwatch. The assault element stacks in silence, and the clock yields to the picture that must be perfect before a single ounce of pressure meets the trigger. A hidden sentry catches the faint shift of a shadow near the breach lane and snaps a short burst into the dark. The noise skims the walls and ripples through the compound like a stone in water. Doors bang. Feet pound. and the quiet plan flexes into contact. Urgency rises. But the team keeps to roles and lanes the way they drilled it. 3 threats bloom at once and try to pull the fight apart. One fighter sprints for the roof with a rifle to rake the breach point from high ground. Another claws for a phone. Thumb already finding the screen to call in reinforcements. A third yanks a hostage toward the rear alley, where a technical might be idling in the cold. Gunnery Sergeant Avery Mantis Collins is already on the glass with her M110 SR, 25 inches, 7.62, NATO. Suppressor mounted. 3 to 18 power, optic clear. Staff Sergeant Noah Park rides the PRC 163 and keeps the net clean. Calls wind with a Kestrel. And reads ranges with a laser rangefinder. He confirms about 200 to 230 meters, depending on the lane. With an 8 to 10 knot crosswind rolling down the alleys. He reminds friendlies, crossing your glass, and follows with a firm hold to keep blue on blue from ever starting. Radio traffic stacks for a heartbeat. Then Avery cuts through with a clean talk on that pins the picture to words. She identifies rear alley movement with a hostage. The caller mid-dial. And the rooftop gunner, setting to rake the breach. Captain Ethan Brooks owns command and control and approves engagement by policy. Hostages first, and collateral avoidance at every step. Avery confirms positive identification and a safe backstop before she even thinks about pressure on the trigger. The first shot belongs to the caller because escalation kills time, and time kills hostages. The suppressed report is muffled, not silent, and the sonic crack is there. But wind and generator hum make it hard to place in tight urban canyons. The phone falls. The alarm does not climb. And the team gains seconds back. Avery resets natural point of aim and keeps her cheek weld while Noah holds wind steady at 8 knots. The second shot is a denial on the hostage handler when a shoulder flashes clear for a fraction of a second. She uses a likely hold near 0.2 mil at just over 200 meters and does not dial. Because speed without hurry is safer here. The handler drops away from the small body he tried to drag. And the lane to the rear alley stays contested. Noah calls magazines and reminds laser discipline with infrared devices off unless required. The last priority in this burst is the rooftop gunner, who is about to rake the breach. Avery breaks his angle with a precise hit, using another quick hold near 0.3 mil as the crosswind stiffens. Immediate incapacitation prevents a wider alarm and buys the assault element a narrow corridor. They report corridor open and moving. And the compound steadies without tipping into chaos. Held together by disciplined shots and a team that never let urgency outrun ethics. The assault element reports a narrow corridor, open and moving. And the shift feels like a door cracking inside the night. Captain Ethan Brooks acknowledges the stability Overwatch just bought and centers the net on hostages first. Collateral avoidance always. He trims the traffic and keeps timing clean so the team can move without tripping over each other. The plan breathes again. Steady and simple. Staff Sergeant Noah Park steadies the pace with short, calm calls that feel like rails on a dark road. Wind is holding. Ranges are confirmed. And friendlies crossing gets a quiet hold so no one paints the wrong lane. He rides the PRC 163. Rangefinder clipped in place. Kestrel tucked, where he can read it without breaking the skyline. It is the sound of confidence earned rather than forced. Gunnery Sergeant Avery Mantis Collins keeps her cheek weld on the M110 SR-25. Suppressor snug. 3 to 18 power optics set for clarity instead of magnified noise. She scans for fresh angles, denies the ones that could rake the breach, and keeps fingers off the infrared switches because PEQ-15 lasers stay dark unless needed. In the back of her mind lives a room from years ago where waiting for the full picture cost a life. That memory reshaped her idea of discipline into ethical marksmanship that guards teammates and the innocent before ego. Small human beats hold the line, as well as tactics. The medic stands ready in the stack, a hand resting on a trauma kit that everyone hopes stays zipped. Noah gives a quiet nudge about magazine management and muzzle awareness, and Avery answers by checking seating and counting rounds by feel. The team settles into one rhythm of breath as they stage for the next decision point, grounded in shared standards, positive identification, and the simple belief that steady hands carry people home. The barricade sits deep inside a reinforced room where cold air smells like dust and oil. 2 hostages are held close, shoulders locked by a shaking arm. A weapon rides near a spine, the barrel moving with each breath. The door is cracked just enough to show a thin slice of cheek, a single eye, and a faint muzzle line in the dark. Captain Ethan Brooks freezes any push and keeps the mission centered on hostages first. He holds the assault stack outside the fatal funnel and keeps sectors clean. Engagement is allowed only if positive identification is solid, and the backstop will stop the round. The perimeter tightens without noise or rush. Gunnery Sergeant Avery Mantis Collins settles on the glass with an M110 SR 25 inches 7.62 NATO and a suppressor. The optic sits at a clear power that balances field of view and detail, with PVS 31A ready for the darkness. Staff Sergeant Noah Park runs the PRC 163, watches the Kestrel, and tracks range with a laser rangefinder. The numbers float steady near 200 to 230 meters across the angles. Noah gives a calm wind call at 8 knots and a suggested hold near 0.2 mil for an ocular shot. He reminds the net that friendlies are deconflicted and that the hostage line remains sacred. Avery confirms a mud brick backstop that will catch the round if the picture appears. She lets the rifle settle into her shoulders and waits for the scene to meet the rule. Rules of engagement stay strict because lives depend on boring discipline. No shot unless the eye, a piece of cheek, and the muzzle line are all visible in one clean frame. Laser discipline holds, with infrared devices left off unless a talk-on requires a brief mark. Trigger fingers stay straight and magazines are checked by touch rather than by hope. The room breathes in small sounds that carry weight. A generator thrums somewhere outside and hides edges of noise. A boot scrapes, then stills, as if the floor has asked for silence. Radio brevity rides the net in a whisper that keeps the compound from tipping into panic. Avery builds the moment on breath rather than on time. Inhale, to gather the edges of the picture. Settle to confirm the backstop and the absence of friendlies in the path. Exhale to accept that restraint is a decision with consequences and that no shot is better than a dirty shot. The team holds the perimeter and keeps patience alive. Captain Brooks owns the authority and trusts the standard he set. Noah keeps the wind in mind and the range is fresh. The decision rests with Avery at her discretion under the rules, ready to break the stalemate only if the ethical shot appears and the backstop is clean. The door seam eases wider, and the picture finally forms. One eye sits in the gap with a thin slice of cheek and the faint line of a muzzle tracing the dark. The hostages are tight to the threat, but clear of the narrow lane that matters. Breath steadies, and the room seems to shrink to the size of that sliver. Gunnery Sergeant Avery Mantis Collins settles behind her, M110 in 7.62 NATO. Suppressor mounted. 3 to 18 power optic, set for a clean field. She checks the mud brick backstop again and confirms there is no friendly body in the path. The range sits between 200 and 230 meters, and the crosswind holds near 8 knots through the alley. The decision is framed by rules and by the picture, not by the clock. Staff Sergeant Noah Park keeps the PRC 163 calm and short. He confirms wind with a Kestrel and clears friendlies so no one crosses a lane at the wrong second. He gives a quiet reminder of a mill hold near 0.2 for an ocular shot that will stop the fight without touching a hostage. The net stays clean so the trigger can wait for certainty. Avery rides the wall of the trigger and takes one breath to smooth the small shakes that live in any cold night. She lets the reticle sit where the eye and cheek meet, where the skull will catch the round and the mud brick will take what is left. The suppressor muffles the muzzle blast, but it does not erase the sonic crack. In tight alleys, the sound is hard to place, and the shot passes through the small window the picture allowed. The door swings open as if the room exhales. The hostages stumble into the arms of the assault element, hands pulling them toward cover and heat. Immediate incapacitation keeps the alarm from blooming into a larger fight. Muzzle awareness, magazine checks, and laser discipline hold as the team moves with quiet urgency. Captain Ethan Brooks acknowledges that Overwatch bought more than time. He confirms sectors are cold enough for movement and keeps the mission centered on the people they came to save. He owns the release authority and he keeps it close. But he recognizes what steady hands just did for everyone. The plan resumes without noise or victory talk. Noah and Avery share a brief look that says, "Enough." They both know the shot happened because the standards stayed in place when stress tried to bend them. Positive identification, clean backstop, and a lane that did not risk a hostage carried the decision. Discipline, not speed, brought the team to this moment. The compound feels larger now that the narrow geometry has been solved. Radios return to measured traffic, and the rooftop hide settles back into watchfulness. Procedures remain exact because the night is not over until everyone is out. What carries them across the next threshold is the same quiet idea that carried them here. That calm choices and clear pictures bring people home. The assault element secures the hostages and pulls them to cover with careful hands and steady voices. A Navy corpsman with Special Operations combat medic training runs quick checks for airway, breathing, and bleeding. He warms cold fingers, looks for hidden injuries, and keeps heads down while rifles watch the lanes. Muzzle awareness and infrared laser discipline hold firm, so no beam sweeps a friendly face. Gunnery Sergeant Avery Mantis Collins and Staff Sergeant Noah Park begin to collapse the rooftop hide with calm, methodical steps. Avery clears the chamber and safes the M110 in 7.62 NATO with a suppressor and a 3 to 18 power optic. She stows the rear bag and folds the bipod, then checks for brass and pockets what she can without losing time. Noah manages light and noise, keeps them below the skyline, and listens for any change on the net. Command and control stays clean as Captain Ethan Brooks confirms the perimeter. He verifies no further contacts and checks that all positive identification areas are cold before authorizing exfil. Sectors are deconflicted, so no friendly line crosses another in the dark. The mission remains about the hostages first, with movement paced to match their strength and the threat picture. The PRC 163 carries short calls that sound like a metronome. Exfil green comes across the net, followed by a route through narrow alleys to a low-signature pickup. The team moves in files that fit the terrain and use corners the way craftsmen use a straight edge. Infrared devices stay off unless a brief mark is needed for a turn. Avery and Noah ghost down the stairwell and pass the stack with small nods. They keep shoulders low and let the street swallow their outlines, while the assault element shepherds the hostages. The corpsman wraps each person in a blanket and checks skin color and pupils again. The group takes short pauses that feel like a reset button for heart rates and minds. Relief shows up in quiet ways instead of big gestures. A steady breath after a long hold. A nod between shooter and spotter that admits the cost and the worth of the work. The faces of the rescued softening as heat reaches them and the noise fades. Captain Brooks gives a final perimeter check and keeps the radio simple. Vehicles idle low. Doors stay open just long enough. And the team climbs in without fuss. Procedures remain exact until the last boot leaves the alley. The sense that discipline under pressure brought everyone home rides with them into the night. Discipline is the quiet thread that held this mission together from the first breath to the last. It was not glamour, and it was not luck. It was ethical marksmanship and patient decisions that protected the innocent inside a crowded maze. The lesson is simple to say and hard to live when the clock gets loud and fear tries to take the wheel. Gunnery Sergeant Avery Mantis Collins carried that lesson through her rifle and through her restraint. She knew that waiting for the full picture was not hesitation but responsibility. Positive identification meant an eye, a slice of cheek, and a clean muzzle line, with a safe backstop that would catch the round. Rules of engagement were not limits on courage, but guides that kept courage pointed at the right target. Trust inside a Marine Special Operations team turned calm habits into life-saving action. Captain Ethan Brooks owned command and control and kept hostages first. Staff Sergeant Noah Park managed the PRC 163. The rangefinder and the Kestrel, so wind and range, stayed simple and true. The assault element held muzzle awareness and laser discipline, kept PEQ-15 infrared lasers off unless needed, and moved only when lanes were clean. These tactics translate to everyday life in plain steps. Breathe before you act so your mind can settle. Get the full picture so you are not fighting ghosts. Set priorities that protect people first. Then act with care even when stress pushes for speed. Let steady choices guide your hands, the way breath guided an M110 SR, 25 inches, 7.62 NATO with a suppressor and a 3 to 18 power optic. The images from the night stay as anchors for the lesson. Frost on the scope turned clear when patience did its work. A barred window became a narrow path to freedom because someone waited for the right frame. The exhale turned fear into control and gave the team room to move. Discipline over chaos brought people home and will do the same wherever care and clarity are needed. Open with a tight hook that sets the stakes in seconds. Then cut quickly through 2 or 3 images that frame the mission. After the hook, settle into measured pacing that mirrors breath control and lets tension build in clean steps. Use brief radio call inserts over natural sound to carry tempo while avoiding clutter on the track. Add minimal on-screen text at key beats that say PID first. Discipline wins, and friendlies crossing so the viewer tracks decisions without guessing. Show accurate overlays only when they add clarity. A small mill-hold graphic near 0.2 at 200 meters helps a non-shooter follow the shot. A wind arrow marked 8 knots gives context without stealing focus. Never place graphics over faces, muzzle direction, or hands that handle weapons because those details carry truth. Keep audio faithful to what happens on a real rooftop. A suppressed shot sounds muffled, not silent, and the sonic crack is present yet harder to place. While generator, hum, and wind can mask direction inside tight alleys. Maintain continuity with proper weapon handling. Magazine management. Laser discipline with PEQ, 15 lights kept off unless needed. And careful muzzle awareness. Grade color from cold to neutral after the climax to signal release. And keep transitions invisible so the craft disappears. End with a soft heartbeat of human detail that ties back to discipline and teamwork and lets the audience feel the payoff instead of being told. Respect real timelines and geography so cause and effect stay clear. Match cuts to breathing patterns and to natural pauses on the radio. Let silence work a beat longer than comfort to honor the stakes tonight. Stay with the mission by subscribing for more true-to-life stories, where discipline protects the innocent and teamwork brings people home. Share a moment in the comments when you chose patience over impulse, and how that choice changed the outcome for you or for someone you care about. If this story brought you a steadier breath, share it with a friend who needs a calm message today. And tap notifications to catch weekly episodes that explore ethical decision-making under pressure. Your support helps us keep details honest and humane. From Marine Special Operations teamwork and clear positive identification to responsible marksmanship that avoids collateral harm, every view tells us that careful stories matter. Every comment helps the next person keep a clear head when the clock gets loud. Thank you for standing with service, restraint, and community.